Hello and welcome to my latest presentation. This is a demonstration of DigiStix Drummer for iPad. So what is DigiStix? Well, I guess DigiStix is a cross between a sampler and a drum machine with built-in sequencing capabilities. There are a lot of use cases for an AUv3 instrument plugin like this. One is being able to record your own drum kits and be able to play them back via MIDI in a host application. You might prefer to design patterns within DigiStix and have them rendered as MIDI within a host. Or you could design a whole song by chaining together patterns and having them run in sync with the host tempo. So let's take a look at the fundamentals of recording and creating your own drum kits. Although DigiStix comes with a decent number of drum kits, the fun starts when you start to create your own. You can actually edit the drum kits in the default bank, so go to the user bank and create a new kit, start off. To import or record a sample, tap and hold on the pad of choice and then pick the option, in this case record. Now simply set the recording level and arm the record. DigiStix will automatically start recording once the incoming sound exceeds the threshold. Finally, you can perform many editing functions such as normalizing the sample, cropping the sample down to size, applying any fade out to get rid of reverb trails, and then you assign it to the pad. So if we tap and hold on the drum pad we just assigned the sample to, you'll notice there's more options available now, including the ability to edit the sample, rename the sample and map MIDI. This is especially useful if you've got some hardware drum pads such as an Octapad or some external MIDI interface. Once you've recorded a series of samples, the first thing you're going to want to do is set the panning and the effect levels up for those samples. So tap and hold on the drum pad and pick options. The alternative is just to swipe up on the pad. The pad options changes depending on which drum pad you last hit. So it's easy to switch between, you don't have to actually close and open this interface. If you assign the open and closed hi-hat to the same mute group, then the closed hi-hats will actually automatically mute the open ones. You can also tell a sample to trigger in reverse from this dialog. You can also place a pad in looped mode, which allows you to load in pre-looped samples and have them repeat continuously. I'll demonstrate that later in the video. So let's have a go at creating a simple pattern. You do this using the pattern construction grid. It's probably best to set the metronome on. Only set the host sync if you're syncing to a DAW. Press the play button on the transport to start the internal sequencer moving. And then just simply tap in the grid where you want to lay the notes. Alternatively, you could arm the record, which is to the left of the play button, and enter the drums on the actual pads and have them auto-quantize to the grid. To solo one or more instrument tracks, tap the instrument name in the song construction grid header. Tap again to return to normal. So let's go over a few editing shortcuts. To enter a run of notes, tap your finger in the grid and slide your finger to left or right and you'll lay a sequence of notes. Tap on that first note and drag again and you'll remove them. A double tap within the grid will enter an accented note. Tap again to remove it. Above the 16 drum pads you'll find a number of modifier keys. If you press and hold one of these keys and tap in the construction grid, it will lay a note of that type. So you can lay reverse notes and triplets and accented notes this way. Pressing the Fade Rolls modifier key and dragging on the grid from left to right will create a fade in. Holding the same button and dragging from right to left will give you a fade out. Holding both the Fade Rolls and accent key will draw a fade in, but it will be faded to an accented note. Holding the 16th note triplet and roll fades will create an even faster drum roll. So let's take a look at other ways to customize your kits and import samples. Now suppose we've loaded a kit but we don't quite like the snare and want to replace it with an alternative. Now one option is to use the assign from kit feature, which allows you to replace an existing sample with one from another kit. In this case you can preview the samples and decide to either replace them or use a sample reference. Notice in this case the sample name is in blue. That's a non-destructive way of building up kits for your songs. If you tap and hold on it and select remove reference, it will revert back to the original sample. We can also import samples directly from the DigiStix documents folder. If you use iTunes to copy them there, you can use this browser to import directly onto the pads. As you can see here, we're auditioning various samples and we're just picking various samples to import directly to the pads. Notice we can do this without actually exiting the dialog. Also notice that these are looped samples, various BPMs. You can import loop samples and set the pad options to loop mode, and once you strike a pad they will continue playing until the pad is struck again. As you can see here, I've loaded a few looped samples and set them to looped mode, and now if I assign them all to the same mute group, when you start one sample the other one will stop. This allows you to do seamless transitions between various loop samples. Now let's take a quick look at recording patterns into a host, in this case Cubasis. So here we have a simple pattern and we want to sync that to Cubasis. So first thing to do is enable host sync. Now when host sync is enabled, the local transport won't work, it relies on that of Cubasis. Notice how the tempo is slowed down to match that of Cubasis. Now if I exit out of full screen mode and ensure record is armed on the DigiStix track and press the record button, it will start to record the pattern into Cubasis. So it's one way of getting patterns in here, but you can also record whole songs by chaining together patterns and record into Cubasis in the same way. Of course you've got to remember to go back into DigiStix and disable sync to host, otherwise we're going to get a duplicate of sound. At this point the most observant of you will notice that I've actually not touched on song construction. It might be something that you want to do in your DAW, but you can do that in DigiStix itself. So song construction is a pretty simple process. You have a bunch of available patterns, those coloured in cyan, and then you have a song chain at the bottom. It's just a case of picking the pattern in the available patterns and pressing the add button or insert button to build up a song chain. Now before attempting to play this back, make sure you enable song mode, otherwise the cursor will not advance across the song. It's also worth pointing out that each pattern can have its own time signature. Now it's possible to use DigiStix for triggering other kinds of samples other than drums. We've got a set here of bells. Each pad has a different bell sound. They're quite random and some are more musical than others. This bell 7 is quite musical, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to tap and hold on it and select melodic remap from the menu. Now melodic remap lets you pick a scale and key. It estimates the frequency of the sound attached to the pad and attempts to create a set of pads which match that scale that you chose. Now the clever thing about this is using the sample references. It's a non-destructive way of mapping samples across the pads. You can simply pick clear sample references and you'll get back to the original drum kit. Now finally, let's take a look at the mixer and EQ section. Now depending on the type of song, you might want to emphasize certain parts of the drum kit. It might be that if you're mixing and matching drum sounds from different kits, you may need to balance them, and that's where the mixer comes in. We also have a full 8-band EQ, which needs to be enabled. This allows you to emphasize the bass drum or the treble, hi-hats or whatever, and make them stand out in the mix. Now this setting is saved as part of the song rather than part of the drum kit. We also include a couple of additional effects which help shape the sound. If you're listening to something like this 80s drum kit, you can use the overdrive to kind of morph the bass drum and give it a kind of a distorted feel. We also have a bit crunch option, and we also have some filtering options. So I think that just about rounds up this preview of DigiStix. Hopefully it will give some of you ideas as to what this app is capable of. I couldn't fit everything in this video, otherwise it would be too long. I may well create some one-off videos just outlining various functions, but for now I think that will suffice. So again, just thank you for watching and thank you for all your support.